All right, it's 1 o'clock, so I think we should probably go ahead and get started. And I am going to introduce Judith and tell you a little bit about her. She grew up in North Carolina in a small mill town. She first came to writing as an art historian, learning to appraise what she saw and describe what moved her. Her previous work has appeared in over 30 literary magazines and anthologies, and she's won more than 15 awards and fellowships, including the Ohio Arts Council, the Virginia Arts Commission, the Thomas Wolfe Fiction Prize, the Washington Prize for Fiction, and the Virginia Screenwriting Award. Her article assignments have taken her all over the world, and she's published more than 1,000 cover stories and features on the arts, design, travel, food, fashion, and books for publications like the Boston Globe Magazine, Elle, Arts and Antiques, the Los Angeles Times, and Travel and Leisure. Judith taught fiction at the Chautauqua Writers Centers at the Chautauqua Institution, the Danville Writers Conference, and the Writers Center in Bethesda, Maryland. Loving the Dead and Gone is her first published novel. It'll be out September 6th this year. And she lives in Cincinnati, Ohio with her husband, visual artist Miki Turner-Yamamoto. Judith, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So Judith and I have known each other for a couple of years, and I remember the day that she called and got the contract for the book. And I've kind of witnessed this journey that she's been on, and I thought it would be very helpful for all of us to, hear a little bit about what she's done to make her launch successful. But first, Judith, did you want to read a little passage from your book so people get a sense of this literary fiction?
Yes, I thought I'd read a short passage from the beginning. And just to summarize, the novel in 4 words is about love, loss, grief, and grace. And I take you in this book to the smallest of places to experience life's biggest emotions. And there is a tragedy that upends this small community. And there are 4 major characters who narrate throughout the novel. And the beginning is with Clayton, who is the one who finds the accident and the dead Donald Ray. So I'll just read a little excerpt from that. The day Donald Ray Spencer was killed, he caught 4 catfish. I found them right there beside him on the floorboard, wrapped in yesterday's paper. They looked as surprised to be dead as the boy did. He lay there, all slumped over the passenger seat, his left eye staring right back at the fish. When I'd first come around the bend at the lake, everything looked fine. I saw Buford's car and Donald Ray's old Chevy parked in front. I remember thinking, I'm not the only man that can't think straight in good weather like this. Donald Ray was working 3rd shift. He had his days to kill. And Buford Jones was a little bit of a mental case and didn't do a thing but lay drunk. And he could do that at the lake as well as anywhere else. Then I saw Buford's car had smashed into the back of Donald Ray's, the twisted grill resting in what had been the back seat. Here's 2 dead men, I thought. And that crackerjack day took some kind of turn. I got out, not wanting to look, but knowing I had to, being the one to find them and all. Buford's radiator was still hissing. His car was empty, and he was nowhere around. Probably down in the woods without a scratch on him, hugging a pint, waiting for the whole thing to clear out. there was a complete quiet over things. A fish jumped and then hit the lake with a hollow slap. I watched the circles on the water surface grow and grow until they didn't count as circles anymore. I opened Donald Ray's passenger door, reached for the boy's right wrist where it hung limp over the seat. The flesh was warm, but lifeless, and the strange contradiction made my heart pound. Either the boy had just died, or the sun was playing tricks. I didn't know enough about such things to be able to tell the difference.
Thank you. Nice. So my first question is, how did you come up with the idea for Loving the Dead and Gone?
Well, you could say I've been working on this novel since I was 3. It really goes back to my first memory. There was a family tragedy, and the memory of that accident and the loss of this young person really marked me. And that memory conflated with later childhood traumas involving parental infidelities. So that really became the inspiration for Loving the Dead and Gone.
Can you tell me a little bit about the writing trajectory, like how you first began writing this and how it came to be published? I know it was a number of years between those two things.
Yes. Well, as you've mentioned, I was writing art criticism and feature articles, and I think it was 1986 when my son was a baby. I left the Smithsonian where I was a project director to focus full-time on writing, and I knew that fiction was something that I really wanted to try my hand at. And I was living in Washington, D.C., and it's an area rich in resources for writers. And I took courses at Georgetown, at American in the MFA program because I was an alumna, and the Writers Center at George Washington University. And that went on for several years, and I was writing this material. You know, the first class I had at Georgetown, and it was with Shirley Cochran, who interestingly was a North Carolina native, and she asked us to create a place, and I found myself back in this store near my paternal grandparents' home that I would go to as a child with my father, that was run by this little person and his wife. And the whole store was miniaturized, and everybody just sort of took this in their stride. It was normal, but it wasn't normal. And when I started growing, it became less normal. But I found myself back in that place when I first started to create fiction, and Shirley encouraged me to continue exploring that world. So I wrote the novel. Well, actually, at first it was a series of a collection of interconnected short stories.
Okay.
And it won the Washington Prize for Fiction in '89. I had a New York agent. And you think you're on your way, but then you're not. I was getting great rejection letters from Pat Strawn at the New Yorker. She was saying, please don't stop sending your work here. So the agent didn't do an amazing job at all. That's an understatement. But I just kept writing because the stories were coming. And I had a period of 12 years where I wrote 3 additional novels. I adapted a screenplay from the second one. I wrote a number of short stories, and yeah, just kept going. And what happened next? I think in 1998, It was optioned by a small, notable independent press.
Mm-hmm.
And the editor there wasn't happy with the fact that there were two first-person narrators. So she had me rewrite it. And then what happened was it gutted the soul of the book. And this takes me back to a point that the writer Richard McCann made in the workshops that I had with him. And I think it was the most important advice as a writer I ever got.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, you have to be careful who you listen to. And you have to decide who you're going to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, they decided not to go forward with the book. And at that point, I had a career that launched in a different but related, interestingly, direction in public relations. So I focused on that for 20 years, and piecemeal was continue to send work out, and things would win prizes, and to reach out to agents. And I ended up at the end of the day, I had 3 agents over the course of 30 years. And then, I realized at some point that that was a lot of time wasted, because I had been aiming for the big houses, publishing houses. And the word that always came back through the agents was, the story's too quiet to succeed in the literary marketplace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was almost like a chorus. So I started to look at smaller presses, and that's when I came across Regal House.
Mm-hmm.
When I think it was 2019 when I really turned a laser eye back on getting this work back into the world.
So the one that was actually, that will be published, the version of this story is what rewrite? Number 5? Number
5, I think.
Okay. So 5 major rewrites.
Yeah. And it's interesting, because I re-encountered the material at different points in my life.
Yes.
And I think you bring, just as you do when you read a book,
mm-hmm.
you go back to it after several years and reread it, you're a different person, and you've had additional experiences in life. And I think it was like weaving a tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'd pull some threads and reweave in a few new ones.
Yeah.
I mean, let's think, Miki, even up to the submission of the last draft, you and I were discussing some pretty dramatic changes.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I am forever indebted to you for encouraging me to kill somebody.
I did. I had her kill somebody. I'm like, just kill him. She's like, what? We were at lunch. So yeah, I feel good that I made a little impact there. Tell me some stories. You were researching this book. You did some crazy stuff when you researched this book to get the scenes right. So I think that's very applicable to everybody here. Tell us some of the craziest stuff you did research-wise.
Okay, the craziest thing. Well, just briefly, I use sense memory a lot in this book, and it's something I've taught courses about. But that idea of going back to a memory, and as if it were a photograph, and pushing the edges of the photograph out and seeing what you didn't perhaps see then. And I put myself back on those farms that were so much a part of my childhood, and in those barns, and just let my senses recreate and become a part of that again.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I did, there's a scene in the novel where one of the protagonists is burying her baby. And I had my father mail me some of the red dirt from the farm,
Mm-hmm.
and I ate it.
Oh.
Because She talks about feeling like she's suffocating and that, like, that she's the one that's being buried. And I wanted to, like, be able to give her that sensation of that taste.
Mhm.
I also have eaten grass, but that's a story for another day.
I think that's so compelling though, because, and we just had a little talk about a fictional setting. And I think, sometimes we can be lazy when we're building a scene, right? We can be lazy about the setting. We want to deal with the action. We want to deal with the dialogue. We want to talk about what's happening. And we don't always engage all five senses. So I'm very glad that you shared the story about eating dirt, because I was blown away when you told me that. I was like, you ate it? But I get it. I mean, that scene it's a compelling scene. And I think partially because of what you did to get your senses ignited to write it.
I like that, igniting the senses. That's it exactly. That's it exactly.
So I want to get to the heart of this, which is kind of what you've done to really make this a successful launch. And I have been with you on this journey, and I have to say, I was genuinely surprised at how much you had to do. I thought, oh, she's got this publisher. This is going to be so easy. And I think I think I was just like, you're doing what? You're spending how much? So I think letting these other authors know some of the levers you've pulled to make sure that this book is successful is going to be helpful. So can you talk about that?
Sure. And I've also made some notes that I'm going to refer to, because there are like 8 things that I would recommend, and I don't want to miss them.
Okay.
As Miki knows, there was a 2-year window between the acceptance of the novel and the publication date. In hindsight, I can tell you that I wish that I had started working on this even earlier than I did. I think I probably started working on it a year out.
Mhm.
Should have been using that other year, because what I found was, as a publicist, I've had to immerse myself in lots of worlds that I don't know anything about, and get myself up to speed so that I can talk to and relate to journalists that are covering that beat. But I tell you, this whole book world, it is the most unfathomable, deep ocean that I have ever encountered. And it just goes on and on. And I swear to you, every day I learn about a new prize or some media outlet, something, a reviewer, something I didn't know about, and it just keeps coming. So when I go back to this and think about the arc of building this machine, because it's really a machine, I think the first thing you need to do is get a grip on your foundational messaging. And a huge part of that is articulating your authenticity. Mm-hmm. As writers, we sort of live in the shadows, and a lot of us don't tend to be the most social people on the planet. So, that was hard for me. It's almost like coming out or something, because especially in my case, I'm writing voice-driven narrative. I know a lot of you are really story-driven narrative, but there's an emotional side of this and a reveal that has to happen, I think, for people to find authenticity in your work. Mm-hmm. And a great resource that I found, if you guys don't know about him, is Dan Blank. And he has this company, wegrowmedia.com. And Dan talks about getting in touch with your key messages and sharing from the depth of who you are. You can pay him $3,000 a month if you desire, but I found that signing up for his newsletters, and which are incredibly extensive. I mean, he gives away so much information. It's incredible. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I needed to own this place. I mean, the place that this book comes from is a place that I tried to escape my entire life. And now, I really have to own that so much of me is that.
Mhm.
So he's a great resource. And I've learned a lot from him.
And I put that in the chat if anybody needs to read.
I saw that. Great. One of the first things you've got to think about are your blurbs. Asking for those early recommendations. These are the first words that position the work in the world. And you've got to think about everybody you have ever known, and in your writing and your professional life, and think about how they can help you now, because people do really want to help you. So the blurbs, and you have to craft an appealing letter asking for these things. I think I spent a good 6 months just working on that, and then there was the timing of it and making sure that I got the key reviews in time to get them on the cover of the ARC. That's critical.
When you say blurbs, you're talking about the quotes from reviews and other authors. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Those things that are gonna, because when the book first goes out to reviewers, that's all you've got. And if they're positive, well, of course they're going to be positive, but it helps when there's someone who's known. I had the good fortune to have been a scholar at one point at the Swanee Writers Conference, and I studied with Margot Livesey, who was incredible. She was actually very influential in the structure of the book. She said, you have to start with the tragedy, which is really interesting because her last book starts with a tragedy. And Jill McCorkle was there as well, and I met her. And so I would encourage you to attend writers' conferences so you can make these connections that will later be able to support you and your work.
And Judith, we have a question in the chat. When do you need to have those quotes in hand with respect to the book's publication date? Can you give some estimated timing?
I'm trying to think. Okay,
It's about 6
January. It was January 2022. And so the book comes out in September. So you see how far away that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
9 months. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. That's a good question. The next point is your social media channels. You need to start building those up. Mine had been, because of my work in publicity, had been primarily focused on design and architecture and visual culture. I had to start shifting all that, like who I followed and what I commented on, to the literary world, and discovering, who to follow there. It takes a long time to build that stuff up. It really does. Redirecting that content and pivoting your focus. So the next thing I would say is, okay, your manuscript has been accepted. At some point, you're going to have a date where you have to submit your final manuscript. Before you submit that, hire a good editor to go through it and do a good line edit on it. I actually worked with 2 outside editors in addition to my in-house editor. And it was months and months and months of, I thought I'd go blind. And, but I think having those outside eyes, your in-house editor is so overwhelmed and they have so many manuscripts that they're going through. And every different pair of eyes that saw this book found different things. And this was right up to I had a final read of the print arc, and I had my former editor at Photographers Forum, who's also a book editor, go through it. And she found like 2 pages, I mean, of small things like, there are all these mistakes that happen in the printing of the arc that are injected like a virus into the file. And those have to be found, little quotation marks that are going in the wrong direction, page breaks that don't make any sense, these kinds of things. It's kind of scary, but it's really important. And then creating a timeline for all your publisher deadlines. Regal House provides you with a handbook, but it's a lot of narrative and no bullet points and timelines, which is what I like. I need to know when I need to do what. And there were points where I would ask a question back to the thing with the blurbs and getting them on the cover, and realizing suddenly there's this huge urgency and I have to FedEx these manuscripts to these writers to get their blurbs. But they didn't give me a specific deadline for my book. It's like I kind of had to figure that out myself. So you need to tease out all those deadlines for yourself. And then we come to the media plan.
Yes. A media plan.
The media plan. So you have to think about which markets you're going to focus on. For example, for me, I focused on the Midwest and the Eastern Seaboard, with a special emphasis on North Carolina, of course, because I'm a native. And there is an intense sense of pride in North Carolina about writing and literature. And then, of course, in Washington, D.C., because I had lived there for 30 years. So that's where I focused the outreach. And then I drilled down, and we determined all the media outlets that we were going to reach out to in these different markets.
And the media outlets were to get like people to write a review of the book or do a profile on you or something.
Right. An interview, a profile. These reviews are critical. At one point, I was very fortunate. One of my fellow graduate students went on to become the deputy director at the Library of Congress. And he connected me with a publisher of another press who took the time to talk to me, and he was like, look, I can't emphasize it enough. You have to get reviews. They're critical. If you don't get the reviews, it's game over. So, I really focused really hard on.
And these were reviews from like Publishers Weekly and Kirk, what were the reviews because these are not reviews from other authors, right?
No, we're talking about the trades first, and then we're talking about literary journals, and then the next layer is the popular press, thinking more about entertainment.
Right.
So the only thing that Regal House has no media department. You're going to find this a lot with small presses. And let me tell you, even if have the good fortune to be signed on with some huge publishing conglomerate, unless they're giving you a 6-figure release, they're not going to spend jack to promote your book. And at one point, I worked with Susan Breland. I don't know if you guys remember her. She wrote Girl in Hyacinth Blue about Vermeer.
Okay.
And it was a bestseller, and her books continue to be bestsellers. But when she was going to have an event in my market, Washington, D.C., she hired me to do her media, even though she was with Scribner, I think. because she said, I can't get these people to do anything.
Yeah.
So that's the hard reality of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the media plan, you've got to figure out regionally, you've got to figure out your audience, and you've got to deal with the trades that make the most sense for reviews and profiles, correct?
Yes. Well, Regal House they do send copies out. They send to Forward Reviews, Kirkus, and Publishers Weekly.
Okay.
That's it. And they do no follow-up.
Yeah. So did you follow up on those? Were you the one?
Yes,
Yeah.
we did. And shamelessly so. I think the first contact was the ARCs went out in March to them. The first contact follow-up was in April. The next one was May. It was just every month.
Yeah.
As it's like, you're building this foundation, and every time something would happen, you build that into your follow-up message. When the Mercantile Library chose the book as a recommended read, that was huge. When I found out that Publishers Weekly was going to review, that's incredible.
Yeah. You got some great reviews.
I'm so grateful. I'm so incredibly grateful.
But I think it's important for this audience to hear how much effort you took to get that to happen, that you were the one following up. You were the one that, constantly emailing and saying, just checking, have you read this yet? Is it's, up
well,
for
let's be clear. I'm the behind the scenes grunt worker, and my employee is the face on this, because you can't do this yourself.
No.
You would be totally they would just disregard that. You have to, and they love, and Miki, this from working with publicity for so many years, editors, reviewers, whatever, they love that distance from what the ask is about, because ostensibly my employee is totally impartial. She's just doing her job.
Right.
Everybody's just doing their job. She recently heard back from Library Journal, which, I'm sorry, I'm not getting reviewed in that. They said they didn't have enough review space, but it washes off Jennifer's back.
Right.
But they know that, when it's the author, there's this layer of personal to it.
And I want to pause and say, I think any of you can hire, even an intern for publicity. Get somebody who's in communications or PR and just getting their start. And, it's not complicated. It's tenacity that wins in this. And Judith is right. The distance is important. If you're the one following up, they don't want to talk directly to the author. They want to talk to the author's publicist. Yeah, exactly.
And it's also really important to have beautiful materials. This is something I always emphasize in my business with the press releases.
I was going to share.
Oh, okay. I'm like, what's going on with the press releases that are going on? And, I'm fortunate. My husband's a visual artist. He's also a gifted designer. And he, in all the collateral and the website, he riffed off the cover. He even had input on this cover. This cover was, and Miki can attest to this, the first go from the in-house designer was sad. It was this very pale, washed out gray that looked anemic, and my husband got with them and changed up the colorways of the book so that the magnolias would pop.
So I love what you did with it. This is a bookmark, just so everybody has context. This is a bookmark next to it, and on the front it looks just like the cover, but on the back she's highlighted some of these fantastic reviews, as well as the summary of the book. And these are giveaways, and I just think picking up those visuals and making everything beautiful it's important. Beauty sells. It really does.
Yes, it does. And I was just in Joseph Beth the other day and talking to some of the booksellers there about my upcoming event there on September 7th. And had the arc with me, and she was like, that's the most beautiful arc I've ever seen. So it really does. And when people go to a shelf and they start arranging books, a beautiful cover can get you turned outward.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really important. So arcs, let's talk about arcs. Once they arrive, here's some things that you need to do. I'm sure that many of you are familiar with NetGalley, the platform where digital arcs are, you pay to have them uploaded there, and then reviewers can download them. And you start to get reviews, and those filter over to where we're going to next, which is Goodreads. So that's one of those media platforms that you need to be building up back at the beginning. Reach out, get on there, build your profile. When you get an image of your cover, load it, everything you can about yourself as a writer, reach out to all your friends. And then you start begging your friends to review, because unlike Amazon, Goodreads is very happy with friends reviewing. They don't mind that at all. So you need to start building those up. Some will flow from your NetGalley reviewers, because it's kind of automatic. It just kind of populates Goodreads for you. But an astounding thing, I was astounded by it. And I'm sorry I put it off so long. I did a Goodreads premium giveaway in May. Mm-hmm. And I wish I had done it the minute I got those arcs, because it was astounding what happened. I woke up the first morning and like 2,500 people had requested the book. So all this just kept building. I think the first giveaway had 9,159 people request the book. And what happens is once they request it, it's like they marked it to read. That's automatic. This is something that Goodreads does for you. I don't know how much you want me to go in depth about Goodreads.
I think just a surface summary, but yeah, it gets put on the person's shelf. If they request to read it, it gets saying that they're going to read it. And then that gives you show up higher in the search results, and yeah.
Right. So then I did another giveaway in June. Mm-hmm. And so at this point I have 13,500 plus shelvings. Yeah. And to give you a frame of reference, thinking about some of my fellow writers at Regal House, their average number of shelvings is 50. So
good job. We had a question in the chat. Did you also use BookBub? I've not heard of that one.
I'm on there. I haven't had a chance to really delve into that platform. And here's the thing, it's like, how far can you dilute yourself?
Right. You've only got, so you haven't done a lot on there. And then somebody else asked, how does Goodreads premium giveaway work? And this costs you money. I mean, you put.
It is $599 to be clear. But where are you going to be able to have 13,500 people see your book and read a little bit about it? And when you do the premium, what happens is, and believe me, I researched this till the ends of the earth. That's part of what took me till May to pull the trigger on it, because I wanted to know it was worth the money.
So how does it work? What do you reach out to Goodreads?
There's just on your author page. They make it really easy. There's just a little button, it's like, start a Goodreads giveaway.
Okay.
So, yeah, basically you sign up. I would advise you to study the giveaways that are on the Goodreads page. Just click on the most popular ones and read how you get this little soundbite to position your book. So you don't want some kind of rambling thing. You want something that's going to really grab them. And thinking of your elevator speech, which is like, that should have been number one, is creating that message. So it's simple to set it up. You say when you want it to start, run it for a month. You want to get the biggest bang for your buck. The points where you're going to see the most activity is at the very beginning for like 4 days. And then it sort of drops way down. And I think I was average like 100 people a day in the middle. And then at the end, the last few days, because they promote the books that are ending more, it jacks way back up again.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes like that.
We had another question. How does giving away the book help your sales? Aren't you losing paying customers? But not all those people are getting the book. They're getting a chance to win the book, correct?
Well, you determine how many books you want to give away. So I discovered the sweet spot was 15 or 20. The first giveaway I did 20, the second one I did 15.
Okay.
So the point, here's what you're buying. You are buying the opportunity to make an advertising impression.
Yes.
So, and this one gives and gives, because what happens is every time you do a new giveaway, all those people who entered or have shelved the books, they all get a message saying there's a new giveaway for a book you shelved. So there's another impression.
Right.
And then when these people that receive the book, 6 weeks after they receive it, they receive an email reminder from Goodreads to review the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I've probably gotten like 10 reviews from these readers so far. And honestly, I haven't tracked it in the last couple of weeks. And then on the book's release day, 13,500 people are going to get an email again. And every one of these emails that Goodreads sends out have buttons with, all these buying options.
Right.
You can't beat that with a stick.
No, and Goodreads, just so everybody knows, Goodreads is owned by Amazon. So this is a very sophisticated marketing platform to readers. It's amazing, and they don't intermingle. So it's not like you're going to do a review on Amazon, it's going to show up on Goodreads. It's a separate platform.
Right. So, and the thing about Goodreads is it lets you build your cred before the book is out. You can't do that on Amazon.
Right.
You can't even review it until it's published.
We're coming up on our last 15 minutes, so I thought I would open it up and just officially say, I know people have been putting questions in the chat, but as Judith continues to talk, please feel free to just ask questions, because I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to learn from her experience here.
Right.
So was there anything you had after this Goodreads?
Oh, yeah. I got a really good review in Forward's reviews, and it will be in the September-October issue. And this is the issue that goes to the Frankfurt Book Fair. Mm-hmm. So I decided to spring for a full page back cover ad. So
in Forward magazine.
Yeah, Forward reviews. Yeah. This is the indie publishers, academic publishers, the Bible that librarians and booksellers look at. Yeah. And lastly, the other thing that I'm doing, the American Booksellers Association has a number of book trade shows around the country this fall in September and October. So I opted to have IPG, who's the distributor for my publisher, display and promote my book at each of these venues. And then for the Midwest trade show, I'm doing a giveaway of 20 books. So Miki, you spoke to a dollar figure, and
Yes.
yeah, I think by the time I'm probably, I don't know, at $8,000 at this point, and I'll probably be at 10 after I do my little book tour through North Carolina, because nobody's paying for that but me. So, yeah, but.
Right. So I just think it's important. People think I think a lot of writers get into this. They think it's going to be some magical thing that's going to make their book take off. And that's true for a couple of authors.
Handful.
Every now and then, right?
Yeah.
But most of us, you're going to have an investment of at least time and probably some money. And I think 10,000 that's what I kind of calculated as well, Judith, that you've invested. So
yeah.
Any questions? Yeah, Elaine.
Hi, I'm a bookseller, almost said former, but I haven't quite quit yet. And I noticed you mentioned Joe Beth. You're going to have a signing there on the 7th. Is that the one in Cincinnati?
It is. And then I'll be in Lexington, October 29th. I'm a featured author at the Kentucky Book Fair.
Okay.
Festival.
So I work for Barnes & Noble, and the ones here in town have pretty much stopped doing any kind of signings, which is very, very sad, but let's not talk about that. Did you approach Joe Beth yourself about this?
Well, that is an unusual situation because I had worked with Michael Link, whom you probably know, perhaps, was for many years the events person at Joseph Beth here, and I had worked with him as a publicist on a couple of my clients' books, including my husband, to have events there. And even though Michael was leaving, I reached out to him and he connected me with the new events person. That was really seamless. And then my publicist reached out to all the other potential event venues and handled all of that. I didn't do that myself.
Okay. What time is your signing at Joe Beth's?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Yeah, I might make a trip up there to meet you.
Oh, God, Elaine, that'd be fabulous.
I'll be there.
Oh, we know with bells on, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Susan, you had a question.
Yes, with respect to what market you were writing this book for, what did you think about that as you started to write? And I know you talked about how you've written this over some amount of time, and so your ideas about that may have changed over time. But I'm curious how, like, I'm writing this for this market, or not thinking about that all.
Not thinking about that.
Colored your thoughts.
No, I mean, it's like, here's my confession. I just channel this stuff, okay? I kind of go into a trance and I watch a film, and I record what I see and hear. I mean, that's the first iteration of it. I'm not thinking about anything. I'm in another world.
Okay.
And then, of course, that's not true when you go back and you're reworking it. Then the intellectual side of your brain gets involved. I mean, I always knew that North Carolina would be very important, but honestly, until I got to this point, I really didn't think about markets. I didn't think about that at all. You know, this was something I was compelled to do, and yeah, I can't confess to having thought about that.
And that's, I think, a big difference between literary fiction, which is what Judith is writing, and we're writing more commercially with crime and mystery, a little bit more attuned to that, I think, when we start the story. But Gloria,
Yeah,
did you have a question?
I think we're more attuned to like the genre. We have to define the genre more clearly up front before we plan our marketing, rather, you know, where literary fiction probably
Right,
isn't so
and
much that.
the genre will give us an audience.
Mhm.
Gloria, do you have a question?
No, I did not. I was agreeing with somebody.
Okay, all
I can't remember who or why, but that's what I was doing.
right. Lynn, did you have a question?
was just going to make a comment that I have read stories of where an author thought they were writing a book for adults. And then when it got to the marketing people, they said, no, we're going to market this as a YA, young adult, or vice versa. You know, sometimes it has more to do with where they think they can sell it.
Yeah.
Than necessarily even what you were thinking you were doing. So I always think that's kind of fascinating.
Well, I have a colleague, a fellow writer at Regal House, and she's written a great book, Valerie Neiman, In the Lonely Backwater.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a murder, but it is cast as young adult, but it really is one of those bound, you know, it sort of straddles those adult and young adult. An adult would certainly enjoy reading that book.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions for Judith? We've got about 9 minutes.
Judith, one of my questions for you is, you've gone through what a tremendous job you've done to prepare to launch this book. During that period, were you able to start writing the next book?
The answer is no and no. Now remember, I have 3 siblings waiting in the drawer. So,
Right, so you have some material.
it's you know, I have this very strange, I was thinking about this morning, my arc is almost backwards. It's like I did all the hard work up front, right? And now I have this material that I am positioned to now get out in the world.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Linda, I just saw your question. What was the outlet name? You're on mute, hon. Sorry.
No, you already put it up there because I saw
Okay.
somebody else must have asked the same question. American Booksellers was my question.
Okay, cool.
Well, you know, the
I
reason
do have a question.
oh, go ahead.
My question, okay, you all come from a whole different world than I come from. My background is all medicine, has been medicine since I was like 15 years old. So I sort of got into this in a back door when I was already in my 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So I have half the time I have no idea what most of you are talking about as far as publishing and all of this kind of stuff. I mean, that's a magic world for me out there. And my first book got published quite by accident, and I have no idea how to connect to all of these things. None. Where do I start?
Well, what about an intern who could handle social media for you and start to work on?
That's a good idea.
You said
I mean,
intern,
you
and I
know,
got a
like-
whole different picture than you got. My
What?
interns all wear. As soon as you said intern,
Huh?
my mental image was a young person with hospital scrubs on and a white coat. That's what an intern is to me.
Okay, well, you need a marketing intern.
Yes, I do. That's what I'm
Well,
saying. Where do I
like
even find them?
universities, there could be the English department at a local university. There might be students who would love the opportunity to rub elbows with a writer. And
So I just walk into the School of Fine Arts and say I need an intern?
well, I would call.
It's all of 2 miles from my house.
I'd still call.
I'd
Still
still
call.
call. It looks more professional to call.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Alrighty.
think it'd be important, Miki, you can jump in here to have some idea of what this intern person would be working on, because one of the things with internships is they want to know what that person is going to be able to take away from the experience.
Exactly. So what's in it for the intern?
What's in it for the intern?
What are you expecting from them? What are how are you going to measure their performance? Obviously, it
Which
could be
you'll have to do for the department.
right. And how many hours a week you anticipate engaging them, and then what they're going to get out of it. What you're going to be able to give them in terms of that experience. That's what makes it worth it for an intern, just like it would in almost any field.
Okay, Lynn, next week when we're in Nashville, maybe we can sit down and I can write some of this down. Because again, you're talking a whole a foreign language to me. Thank you.
And this, I am recording this session. I'll make it available so you can listen to it more than once, which I think would be helpful. But I also wonder if, at some other meeting, maybe we could do a sort of boot camp.
Yeah.
Some of these issues.
There you go, Miki.
And just like devote the meeting to that, or call a sideline meeting to discuss that. Because I think this is all very interesting, because there's minimum things that it seems like if you are already someone who's published or have a book coming up and want to start doing some of this prep work, things like setting up a web page and how to use it, and getting on Twitter and Facebook to start your outreach. So
Right.
yeah, they're great questions, and I think we should look at doing that.
A boot camp's a great idea.
Thank you.
February for you.
There you go. Well, we've got maybe March.
Deep midwinter, February, March. Yeah.
Lynn, what else were you going to say? I'm sorry, we kind of cut you off there.
Well, I think some of it too is recognizing what your priorities are, what your definition of success is, what you can afford to outsource. And all of, that's one of the reasons why I asked Judith, well, were you able to start writing your next book? Because of the fact that I am old and
As old as me.
the clock is ticking and it's my priority to write that next book.
Yes.
Well, I'll be honest with you that I hired a publicist because I suck at it. And furthermore, I want to work on the next book, So, and same with my website. I mean, Author Bites did my website and that cost me money. But for me, that was better than having a really dinky website that I would try to do. Judith has a tremendous advantage in being married to a visual artist. Oh my gosh. And obviously a very good one. But I do think that, I've given this a lot of thought in terms of where am I going to put my energies and what do I want to be doing in the last years of my life?
Well, I'm right there with you. And for me, this is ambition driven by the regret of omission.
Yes.
Because I've had a career in literature and I've been a writer's writer.
Yeah.
Well, now I want to be the people's writer. And I confess that I did not even, and Miki, I sat in your living room and said this, I had no confidence that this book would have any kind of general appeal. I thought that it would get attention, a little bit of attention in the literary community, and that would be it. But boy, reading these reviews that perfect strangers have left have just astounded me. And they've really told me what the book is about. And I have realized that it is, you know, not too quiet to succeed in the literary marketplace.
Yeah.
So just as you said, it's like you have to think about what your priorities are at this moment.
There was a moment with Judith and I remember I asked you a really tough question. I said, what's more important to you? That this builds your reputation in the literary world or this sells books? And I remember you had to go away and think about that. And you came back and you said, well, I want both. I would prioritize selling books. And it was like, okay, now we can create the media plan because we know what our goal is, right?
Right. But, you know, to even say those words felt like something that I wasn't entitled to.
Yeah.
So, you know, I thank Miki for prodding me to think about that possibility.
I think that's, I recognize that in myself as well too. And, you know, it's something, I went to an RWA conference once and there was a really amazing speaker that talked about the imposter syndrome and how everybody has it. It doesn't matter if you're the president of the United States, you probably have it. Yeah. But writers, it's very prone to writers, and writers somehow feel, you know, that I made that first book, it was a success. Am I ever going to be able to do another? I'll never be able to do another one. Somebody's going to discover I'm a fake. And that's just built into, it's just something that we need to realize we have and get past it.
Absolutely. And, you know,
Especially women.
What? And women?
Especially women.
Oh, yeah.
But I think of all the arts, well, perhaps with the exception of acting, this is the most difficult. You know, my husband's a visual artist and he looks at me and he says, I cannot believe how hard you have had to work to get your work into the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's a totally different game in the visual arts. And there is an enormous amount of rejection. And some of it can be totally heartbreaking. But you have to learn to just discard it, and you just have to keep moving, and you have to keep sending out work, and you have to be undaunted. That's, you know, it's like if I boil it down to one word, it's undaunted. And that's what you have to be. You know, you have to really want this.
Yeah. And when you get that review,
I mean, I've walked away from it a lot in my life. So
when you get that review, like the one you said you got, the ones that you said from total strangers, I think that's when you start to see it's, you know, it's real.
Well, you know, that is true. And there's that adage that the book belongs to the writer until it's published, and then it belongs to the readers.
Yeah.
And it's so wonderful to see this moment and to have people, you know, say that they read it and, you know, they couldn't put it down. They read it in one go and they were so moved and they experienced all the emotions and what incredible character development. And it's so gratifying. You know, it means a lot more than, you know, coming from some literary magazine or whatever. I mean, it's I've been amazed, and it's very moving.
We are all excited for you, Judith, and I urge everybody to please order a copy of Loving the Dead and Gone from your favorite bookseller and to post a review.
Yes, please, a text review. Just a final note, Goodreads doesn't pay attention to stars, ladies. They only like text. That's how the algorithm works. So
Susan, what else were you going to say?
I just love the the excerpt you read.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. Thank
It's
you
a-
so much.
A beautiful, beautiful book.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Judith.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so
Thank
much for
Very
joining
much.
us
This is very
today.
informative. Yes. Thank you for spending Saturday afternoon with us.
Yes,
Right.
we appreciate it.